And I want to thank Carol Turnbow so much because she has really kept this alive for us for a number of years, our Thursday night. And this Thursday night is, I feel like we're particularly blessed because we get to come together. Uh, we're a group that there are enough people here to, make up a good support team, but at the same time, we're not so large that we couldn't ask questions, talk back and forth. It's really meant to be more of an intimate learning experience as compared to a Monday night call, which is, we've had our Monday night call for, I think we're going on 32 years now. And that, of course, is information, inspiration, but it's hundreds and hundreds of people. So this night really is always for us to hopefully in depth help you to expand and to grow and to really reach out and put your arms around more and more people. And I think we're certainly at a place where we are going to see our company just begin to expand even further. If I think about the Juice Plus company, and it's now, well, by the end of this year, we're 51 years old. I've been with them 34 years. And the changes, are amazing, but the basics are the same. There is nothing really different from 34 years ago as it is today. It's just the techniques are maybe a little different. The outreach can be a lot faster because of our virtual world today. But what I wanted to share with you tonight, and it might take us a couple of times. It took us 2 evenings, I think. The first time I shared John Maxwell's talk with the leadership teams. But John Maxwell, who many of you know, is at this point, he's a rather famous author. He's written just dozens and dozens of books. I've forgotten exactly how many he said, but he's got something like 35 million copies sold of all of his books, and everything's been written on leadership. You might say that and he said it's over 40 years now, he's been a student of leadership. And I find that fascinating because when somebody really focuses on, one topic such as that, you evolve in your learning of what you are observing and interacting with. And certainly, I think that he has a huge amount to offer. But I thought I would share my notes with you from this call. It was yesterday. I found it very inspiring because he was very down to earth and yet very clear and succinct in what he had to say. But he was talking to top leadership across the world. So, again, it was that whole thing about no matter where you are with your business or in life, you can always expand. You can move up to a higher level. And we're not just talking about your check or your um, the size or growth of your organization, but in all areas of life, just really stepping up to a higher level and doing that with your life as well as your business, and really grow into places that maybe you never thought of before. And his whole talk was centered around the word anticipation. And anticipation is exciting and it's energizing when you anticipate good things that are going to happen. That is certainly, it motivates, it inspires. And so at any rate, we're gonna talk about that, and I'll share with you the notes that that I took from this, and hopefully I'll read my own handwriting. Okay, but he's the latest book he's written is The Leader's Greatest Return, and he says it's really important to help yourself as you grow up in business or in life. But what are you doing to help others? Because that's where the real return comes in all areas. What makes a leader? How do you spot one? And he said, if you look around and you see people who are producers, whether they're, in maybe the jobs they're in, the lives they're in. I mean, just looking at moms, think about all the skill sets that moms have to come up with. They're great producers, okay, in all aspect of the word. So, if you find producers, those are usually people who are going to take those skills and apply them to anything. So if you can grow up for yourself, it's great. But if you can spot producers, you can become a producer, it's great. But if you can spot producers, that expands everything even faster. And so he said the one thing that all leaders have, they either, have developed it or they are developing it, is that every leader they can see more than other people see, and they can see it before other people see it. And he said those things are something that certainly develop in people as they grow up through their lives. And I thought this really fascinating as I, look at my sponsor, Jeff Roberti. Well, certainly he'd had enough experience that he could see more than I could see. So, I remember that saying that you become great by standing on the shoulders of people who have already created experience that's going to benefit you as well. And then they see before others see it. If you look at somebody like Jay Martin and a visionary, certainly he's been a real gift to all of us because, nobody thought wellness or fruits and vegetables. I mean, we've had Juice Plus for almost 30 years. 30 years ago, nobody was thinking about that. So, it's really being able to see before other people see, because then you can bring those things that are going to be good for people to them. So he said, but how do you extend your more and extend your before? Because those are things certainly that you can grow into and you can push out and expand. And I thought that was rather fascinating. So he said, the more you see, the more you'll be able to help your team see. And if you can help your team get a bigger picture, then you're going to move more quickly. And that was one of the things I can say that Jeff was really good at is, he could paint that picture. And we see of a lot of our leadership today grew up. If you've had an experience that has worked for you and been successful, then you can paint that picture for someone else. I remember as I began to start working with Jeff and my business, and they would ask you to do trainings. And I thought, well, how am I going to do a training? What am I going to say? And he said, just tell them exactly what you did. Just tell them exactly what you did. Well, we've been able to train for 34 years and continue to train because all you have to do is say, this is what I did. And so I can teach you to do it. And he said, for people, there's so much more of the more, okay? And there's so much more of the before than you can access than people ever give themselves credit for. And that was something he was really emphatic about, that everybody can stretch into seeing more and everybody can stretch into seeing before because of their experience. So he said, you want to really see things as they could be and say, why not? Why not me? Why not us? Why not now? So you're always looking for possibilities. And I think one of the things I love most about this Juice Plus adventure is that it's so creative. We've had the same product for, as I said, almost 30 years, if we look at the basics of Juice Plus, but it's the creativity of how do we reach more? How do we stretch out and create more exposure? What are the events that we're going to create together that's going to create a bigger picture? How do we really expand this thing? And so he said, two things come into play here. It's creativity and flexibility. So there's and this is something that, and I even, when I was teaching, I used to, remember talking to my children about this as well as my students. There's always an answer to any and everything, always an answer. And this attitude is what always keeps you in the game. As Stephanie said, everybody has their cloud and everybody has their frustrations. Sometimes as we reminisce with some of the people that have been here a long time, we'll talk about the times that we were just flat on the floor, devastated over whatever, being sent to our room because we were just not in condition to be the positive that we needed to be. So everybody has their frustrations as well. But when you realize that there's always an answer to whatever the challenge and that together we're going to figure it out, then this attitude keeps you in the game. So if you believe there are always possibilities, that keeps you in the game. And the more possibilities you realize, then you begin to see more and you begin to see the before. And so you know that the more exists or the before exists. So he said, we sum this all up with one word, and it's called anticipation. Anticipation of what this is, what this can be, how big it can be. In listening to him, I was thinking to myself, how did I myself walk through that? Because I started my business. I just wanted, and I heard Stephanie say she wanted to just break even. I wanted to just make enough that I could survive with a teaching salary and suddenly single and teaching in Louisiana. I don't think it was minimum wage if I look back on it. But I just wanted to make enough to be able to breathe financially and not be scared. And so then as it began to the picture, Jeff's painted a picture that is way too big for me to even comprehend. But I can remember, well, maybe I can make $5,000 a month. Boy, if I made 5,000 a month, I'd be out of my mind. That would be more money than anybody ever heard of. And I've been out of my mind a long time. But the thing is, I had that first anticipation of the possibility. And so then when I got there, I thought, well, I can stretch another, I can get to another 5,000. So the anticipation began to realize that there was more. There was more. And then you begin to have experiences on what worked for you as you did your daily activity. So you begin to see, things before other people did, so you could turn around and teach it. So anticipation of more and before is exciting because you're making a difference in other people's lives. And this is where, when we talk about community and we talk about, the fact that we love what we do and we like it when we're part of other people's success, it's anticipating and being able to lead people with the realization that, this is good. It's been good for others. It's going to be good for us, and we're going to be good together. So this becomes contagious. And I think that's, what's really important is that anticipation becomes contagious. People like to be part of something that has energy, that's fun, that's, in this contagious environment, you're not only developing yourself, but you're helping to develop others. And it is contagious. As I watched other people, as I began to grow, I watched them, work at this, begin to have success. It was fun. It was growing. So again, why not take this to a level that you didn't dream possible? Why not dream bigger? I know I've heard this from Eric Worre's events. I hear Lauren say it often. We think too small. You can stretch that thinking. And then it's also the belief that, what you are looking forward to, what you're anticipating can come about. And again, we're back to there is not anything that can happen that there's not an answer for. So he talks about, how he developed his own, I guess you would say, passion, which was he wanted to investigate leadership. He wanted to know everything about it that he could. He wanted to write books about it. And he gave this example about himself. He said, he has written, I think at this point it was like 40 something books, and he was talking with a publisher about a book that he had written, that they were looking at getting the contract for the distribution of the book. And he said, I begin to work at thinking, what questions might he ask me? What would he want to know? So again, this is preparation for what's to come. What might he want to know about me? And he said, well, if I've written 40 books, maybe he thinks there are no more books in me. Maybe he's going to say, do you have any other books in you? Or if we take you on as someone we're going to promote in the, in this world of marketing books. So he started writing down all of the books that he still had, that he wanted to write, the things he wanted to do, the things he wanted to be part of. And so that anticipation paid off well, because the first question they asked him, do you think you're done, or do you think you have any books in you? So he really, anticipation is something that is very important. He said, really, if you would, and he gave us all the assignment of really looking to yourself and what is it that you really want, and what is the anticipation of how that's going to come about, and then let your creativity come into play and allow it to come into play. So he said anticipation is something that means that when you anticipate, this creates action, and action again creates possibilities. He also talked about when an opportunity arises, it's too late to get prepared. You want to get prepared before. You want to be thinking about, what is it that you want this to become for yourself? Now, for me, I couldn't have imagined what our business or this organization is at this point today when I first started, because I couldn't stretch that big into, the more. I couldn't stretch that big into what it could be. I had to stretch at my pace of being able to push it out as it fit. So I could do that, and I found out in like $5,000 increments. Like I could make another 5,000 a month. What would that take? What would I have to do to make that happen? Events, whatever. And then as that began to catch up, and it always did, what was the next thing? What was the next amount? And for me, it's been somewhere around that 5,000. I can push out 5,000 and continue to do that, and that adds to the check all along. And today, as an organization, we do well over, it's by far more at this point than $10 million a month in Juice Plus sales as a whole team. So if anybody had told me that when I started, I would have been like, I think they were out of their mind. But again, it's that anticipation of what's that next level that you're gonna reach, and how you go about that. It may translate to you better for you to talk about something to yourself, like how many more team members you're going to have, or how many people in, PB or POB, how many clubs are you going to have? For me, it was the amount, and then I would come back and break that down to all of those things that would have to go into place for that to happen. So he said, again, let's see here, put yourself in the place that you want to be. And then he said, you want to surround yourself with the right people, places, books, things that are going to facilitate that. The right places and the right people. And this is something too, as I listen to him, and you go back and you kind of backtrack on, what was I doing as this was growing up. And I can remember before I was a national marketing director, I wanted to hear every national marketing director I could hear. I would, and again, we weren't really traveling across the country as easily in that point, but if I could get myself from New Orleans, which is where I live, to Dallas or some of the other cities where, there would be events where the national marketing directors would speak, I wanted to hear everything that they had learned. I wanted to hear what they had to say, because their position was the position I was striving for. So he talks about, big people can make you feel bigger as well. And it might not be just, national marketing directors or people who've grown up in our business. I also wanted to hear, Jay Martin's wisdom. I wanted to hear how people thought. I've always liked that. I like sitting next to people on planes because I want to know their story. I want to know everybody's story. And that's what he was looking for, was people who he admired in the world that he was in, so that he could get as much of that input, that experience. Many, many years ago, when my children were really little, I came across a book that actually was written for men in the corporate world, but it was called In Search of Excellence. And it was what goes into somebody becoming a pro at whatever they choose to do in life. And you become a pro by learning as much as you possibly can from those people who have already achieved in the profession you want to achieve in, and really taking the things that fit you and incorporating those, as I said, if they fit. So, oh, good, we still have a little time here yet. But he said, be around people that can help you expand your more and before. So people who have, so now you're standing on the shoulders of giants because they've walked the path. So they're seeing the more, and they're seeing before other people see, not because they necessarily have a special gift, but because they've had the experience of being in those places. So he said that he had made a list of who were the top 10 people that he would like to speak to. If he could choose anybody to speak to, who were his top 10? And he said, then he, these were the 10 people he admired the most. And he said, so then he started, reaching out to see if he could, he said, this would have been in the early 1970s. He said he was going to offer them $100, which was a huge amount of money at that time, if they would speak to him for an hour. And he said only 2 people responded with yes. But he said what he learned in those 2 hours, he said, was some of the best advice he'd ever gotten. And his business lived off of that advice for the next 10 years. So, you're capturing all of the positive, you're capturing, and you can hear this, and again today. In the 70s, you didn't have things like podcasts and TED Talks and things of that nature. You had to reach out to the people themselves. So there are many ways to go about really getting that info. He said that he really looks at collecting data for himself to help him grow and expand the more and the before, so that he can see further and bigger and paint a bigger picture for others. He collects that during the year, and then at the end of the year, he goes back and spends a whole week in reflection as to what did I get, how did I go about using it? And he looks at this time spent with people that he admires as an investment. So, and he said he gave us this task as well. Over the next 24 hours, make a list of people that you really want to meet. And he said, and this is something that I taught. I was in the psychology department as well as child development, learning disabilities when I was in college, teaching college, which has now been a really long time ago. But one of the things that we really learned and shared with students is that we use so little of our creative brain power. We only use about 2% of the gray matter that we have. And so if you give your brain the instruction, if you decide, I would like to meet with and talk to so-and-so, then give your creative brain the instruction to figure it out. And you'll be amazed at how that can happen. And I've got a few books I can refer you to that explains that very well. So as you meet and talk with people that you admire, that expands your ability to see more, and it expands your ability to see before others do, so that you can help them. He said one of the things too that he wanted to do as far as expanding his ability to learn and to see more was he wanted to visit all the presidential libraries in the country. And he said he did that because he wanted to know how they thought. They were all leaders. Some were admired more than others, but he wanted to know how they thought. What was their thinking? And I find that fascinating because we do learn from others that have gone before. So he said, go to the places and to the people that expand your more and your before. And he said, for every one of us, the secret to our success is that you're growing right now, you're expanding right now. For every new customer you have, for every new team member, as you go to events, if you're doing those things that are bringing you a return, then that expansion is going to lay the foundation and continue to lay the foundation for your success. So it's preparation on the front end and reflection on the back end to maximize your experiences. And when he talks about preparation, read, the books that, that you may be interested in, that are going to facilitate your learning. And he talked about what he called the people pile. They were all in a big pile here in the world. And if you're going to stretch out, from your pile, how do you get out of the pile and stretch out into who and the best that you can be? And when he talked about books, I thought this was really interesting. He said, whether it's books, podcasts, TED Talks, whatever, he employs what he calls the ACT system. And it's the words ACT, ACT. And it means action you're going to apply, change you're going to make, and the teaching that you're going to do as a result of that. So as he said, as he goes through and reads books, he said if we were going to read his book, The Leader's Greatest Return, he said, he said, I have a pen that, clicks to 4 different colors. And he said, as I go through the book, I'm going to mark it. And one color will reflect things I want to take action on and apply for myself. The other color, another color that he chooses, would say the changes that I may want to make for myself because I now have this new insight. And the third would be, what from this book do I want to teach other people? So he says he applies the ACT system to everything that he reads. So he said everyone can have an ACT system. Let's see, the big ask question. So he said the biggest thing that served him the best in his whole career, and as his career continues, was to ask questions and to ask good questions. And he also has a book that good leaders ask great questions. And this, I think, is something that really serves us very well and can be a great asset, is to really come up with questions that are going to really enable you to help other people and yourself in the very best way. If we listen to the girls that shared with us tonight, asking questions that are authentic and really help people not only get a vision, but see that, it's like us saying, what's the cloud? What's the wound? What's the fear? If somebody will really share that with you, then you have an opening to really help them make a difference for themselves and therefore you as well. So he talks about what he called his learning lunches, that when he would speak with someone who he really wanted to learn from, he would have looked at all the material maybe that they had out there. He would have listened to their trainings or what they had been doing, and then he would have his questions ready. It wouldn't be just a small talk kind of interview. And so he said, as you do that, you expand to become a little bigger, a little smarter, you're more, and your before expands. So he talks about some of the questions, and these questions, as he said, they not only expand yourself, they help you expand your company, your team, and that person that you're speaking with as well. And so he asks that we ask ourselves these questions, okay, but they're questions that you may want to use with people as well. And the first one is, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned in your life? What is the greatest lesson to date that you've learned in your life? And that's really it's when you have to kind of think long and hard on, because there are a lot of lessons that come along, but what's the greatest lesson? And then what are you learning right now? What do you feel like you're capturing right now as far as lessons for your life? How has failure or disappointment shaped your life? How has failure or disappointment shaped your life? Has it made you different? Has failure or disappointment made you different? Who do you know that inspires you? Who do you know that inspires you? What have you read that inspires you? What have you read that inspires you? What have you done that you're really proud of? And I love the 7th question here. How can I add value to you or your life? How can I add value to you? Because when you ask someone, how can you add value, and you truly mean it, that now creates a connection, but it also brings you to a point of gratitude, because you're grateful for the input they've given you, and you're grateful for the ability to make a difference. So that was his basic talk. And then there were a few things people asked him. There were 3 questions that were allowed. One came from Europe, one came from Australia, and one came from the US. So I'll give you those 3 because I loved his answers, and he didn't know what the questions were going to be. And so someone said, well, what about team members that you have, and maybe they say they're going to start and they never start, or they become complacent and they become dormant? What would you do? And he said, well, you have to find again the connection. You have to get connected with that person. It might even mean, some of the questions, getting to really know them again, and establish that that person is valued, that they have value that they're going to bring, and you have value that you're going to offer. And he said, then you need to take the essentials of our business and see if those essentials fit that person's priorities. Because everybody does things according to the priorities in their life. Do the essentials of what we do meet the priorities that that person has? Now, if you are connected to them and you value them and they know they're valued, it's then just a matter of, this is what we do and this is the return that we can expect, but does that fit their priorities? It may not. And so if it doesn't, then it's best to encourage them to do what fits their priorities. If it does, then there may be a reawakening. So he said that you have to look at what is the return for the person and what's the reward. What is the reward for the activities that are essential, that are going to need to take place for them to get the return that they want? And so essentials need to be identified, and then that person has to identify with those essentials. So that was that question. The next question came, and this was interesting, I thought, because it was a great answer to this question. This question was, can leadership development become a distraction where business activity is concerned? And I thought that was really interesting. And his answer was even more interesting, because it was not just leadership development. I mean, we hear a lot about self-development, leadership development, getting ready to get ready as far as your business is concerned. He said, whatever we are doing has to be getting the desired outcome. So whatever activity, whether it's leadership development or telling the story or events or whatever, he said it has to get the desired outcome, or else it becomes a distraction. So he said there's a big gap between the goal and then what you do, the action to achieve that goal. He said education or learning, whether it's leadership development, whether it's anything, going to a training on how you're going to build your business, all of those things, education or learning is only useful if applied. So the gap is really, the big gap is the information and then the application. If there's no action in between to create the application to get the desired results, then you've identified a distraction that is just using your time with no return. If something doesn't lead you into action, then it's totally worthless. So that's a wonderful way to evaluate. If you're spending a lot of time on something, but it brings no action, then you have no results, then it's a waste. And so then the next thing was, the last question was, what do you feel like has kept you in high energy? Because he's definitely in high energy for 40 years, writing books and having such success. What continues to energize you? And he said, again, it's the word anticipation. And he said, anticipation of what's it going to be? How big is it going to get? How many books can I write? How many teams cannot build, and he said that really what energizes me is the anticipation, but that's fueled by the people. He said the people I have around me are people that I really enjoy. Our community is one that's inspiring. We inspire each other, we energize each other. We're there to have conversation, we're there to have, you know, continue to expand our vision. And similar vision and similar values usually bring people to an energized success. So I just, I hope you all, got something from that. I loved it. I loved his talks. I think, if he does any TED Talks, I don't know. I really haven't looked at that, but obviously his books are good, and have had great success over the years. I've got 3 books I was going to share with you, and one I'd encourage you. We have used this book forever. I can remember in the first years of my business, I was giving it out to people on, I think it was audio tapes when it was, I think audio tapes first came out, and you put it in your car. And you all know this book, I'm sure. It was written in the 30s, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. But what's so interesting about this is that, and I would really encourage you to read this, maybe even to come to this call with some of the highlights that you would get from it, is that written in the 30s, of course, when they talk about a millionaire, then that was the ultimate, there was no such thing as people who had made more than that. But Napoleon Hill was very interesting because he studied success, where we talk about John Maxwell studying leadership. He studied success. Why were people successful? It wasn't like he wasn't studying failure, he was studying success. And what I love about this book, and you see it repeated throughout other books over the last 100 years or so, is that truth and basics are always truth and basics. We look at our business today, and I started this 34 years ago with a rotary dial phone. I do the same basics. The same truth is there for my basic activity. I just do it in all different formats now and reach more people than I ever could before. But you'll get basics from this. They're classic. And it's something that I'm sure you can get it on audio if you want to walk and listen or exercise and listen or whatever. But it's a really great book. And in all of these, you shape everything by your thought process. And let's face it, we get a lot of negative input at this point in our lives as far as our thought process is concerned. And that you have to be the guardian at the gate of the door of your mind. I've said that many times, but I really believe it. And sometimes I have to slap myself around in regard to that. But you've heard me say this very often too. This is another one. In this book, again, written in the 60s, reiterates some of these things with a little different approach. But again, it's the same truths and basics, and it's The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. So again, it's really thinking about what your thought process is like and how you are going to shape that to shape your life. And when I look at somebody like John Maxwell, I mean, it was, how did he step into the positive energy every day? What was the things that, and again, he outlined them, really listening for interviewing, talking to people, listening to things that really inspired and gave him that positive energy that as he reached for more and for before to grow in his field. And then the last one, and this one has had many different, it's the same book. It's had many different covers. I think I came across this in 1990, Gratitude, A Way of Life. And again, it's a great book because it puts you in mental, I guess, position to be positive and to really be able to look at what are you anticipating, what are you, what are you going into, what is that picture? Because you have to shape the picture of the imagination. If you don't have it in your imagination, it's hard to step into it. And for me, I had to stretch it a little bit at a time. But as you do that and it gets bigger and bigger, then you can stretch a little further and a little further. And so I think these are all 3. This one's by Louise Hay. Gratitude, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, Dr. Joseph Murphy. and then Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. They're basics as far as truth is concerned, and I think it would be great for your business. So we're a few minutes past, but hopefully this has been enlightening to you all. I really enjoyed the John Maxwell talk, and I walked away from that feeling re-energized again as well. And it's something that I work at doing for myself, looking at what are the things that do lift me at times when I'm not at my peak, or because we all have times there are times when you're so happy you can't contain yourself. You can't get to the event fast enough. You can't, get your people on stage fast enough, and then there are times when somebody's scraping you off the floor. So, how do you take control of that so that you're really the one who's guiding your ship, and you're the one that's in control of that thought process that really shapes your life as you go. So that's our call really for this evening. I wanted to remind everyone this Monday night, you want to really build for the Monday night call. It'll start 30 minutes early. It will be a Zoom call. I'm going to encourage you all to reach out. Hopefully your national marketing directors have sent you the flyer. If not, reach up to the national marketing director for that. The flyer just came out day before yesterday. We had a little trouble getting that together, but this is where we really show how good we are in reaching to our people. So, if you do what we call relay calls, you call your first line, they call their first line, they call their first, all the way down. I mean, you can change something on a dime. So let's really have people knowing that Monday night it's going to be NMD's Unplugged, so they'll hear the good, the bad, the everything, what the journey's like and where we are today. And then we'll have Amanda Wright, who's going to do a great talk with us on with interviewing people as well on new business as well as business that it has happened in the past, the business that's happening today, and just basic foundational truths as far as growing our business is concerned, no matter what promotions come and go. So hopefully that everybody will be on board for that. And then of course, after that, we follow with Q School. Our Q School is going to be very exciting. We've got Mike Clifton is going to take us on a virtual tour of the home office, which we've never done before. Just think I love the energy of it. He's going to dress in a tuxedo and carry a champagne glass, so that'll be fun. And then they're also going to take us on a virtual tour of the warehouse. I've never been on a virtual or personal tour of the warehouse, and so I'm very excited about that. I went to the warehouse years ago when it was water filters, but I've never been to the Juice Plus warehouse. So we'll get that as well. So a person to qualify for Q School needs to be a QSSC or SSC or Q. Our national marketing directors are, they've already been through it. So, it's just for our leadership team that's up and growing to national marketing director. And every school we've had, eventually, the people who come to those schools always go to national marketing director. So it's almost, I guess you would say, that's your coming out party, you might say, is the Q School, because it's going to take you to national marketing director. So thank you all so much tonight. And Carol, we appreciate you a great deal for this call, and all of you that are on it. And so let's go get them. I guess we're getting fairly close to the end of the month, not totally there, but let's have a great month. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Fantastic training. Thank you so much, Cheryl.
So welcome. I love it when I have something that's like hot, and I felt like that was hot. Okay.
Cheryl, that was amazing.
What?
I really enjoyed it. It's Mickey.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Awesome, Cheryl. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
all
much.
for
It was
Thank you.
incredible.
Great. Well, we'll do more of this, and you can come back next week if you have questions on it or discuss it. And Napoleon Hill, if we all read that book again, it's wonderful things to discuss. It really, it's stuff like that that keeps me on top of it all, as far as I go back and I get regenerated and re-inspired by things that were inspiring to begin with. Okay. Okay, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you, Cheryl. Have a blessed night. Cindy
Cheryl,
Torres.
it was amazing. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.